The year is 1895. Buenos Aires is the Paris of South America. The streets are lined with marble. The opera house rivals anything in Europe. Argentine beef feeds the British Empire. The peso is stronger than the dollar. Economists predict that by 1950, Argentina will be richer than the United States. Fast forward to today. Argentina just elected a president who literally campaigned with a chainsaw. Inflation hit 211% in 2023. The peso has been deleted, reborn, and deleted again so many times that grandparents need a calculator to explain their childhood allowance to their grandkids. So here's the question that haunts every economist, every historian, every Argentine who's watched their savings evaporate overnight. How does a country that had everything destroy itself not once, not twice, but over and over again for 200 years? This isn't a story about bad luck. This is a story about a curse. A pattern so predictable, so mathematically precise, that you could set your watch to it. Every 10 to 15 years, Argentina presses the self-destruct button. And today, we're going to dissect exactly why. This is the forensic autopsy of the world's most talented economic suicide artist. 1. The ghost of greatness. What Argentina was. To understand the curse, you need to understand what was lost. In 1913, Argentina's GDP per capita was higher than France, Germany, and Italy. Buenos Aires had subway systems before most European capitals. The country was receiving more immigrants than the United States in some years. Italians, Spaniards, Germans, they all flooded in because Argentina was the land of opportunity. The phrase rich as an Argentine was an actual expression in Paris. Let that sink in. 100 years ago, being Argentine meant being wealthy. Today, the phrase would be a dark joke. So what happened? What turns a nation from the envy of the world into a cautionary tale? The answer is not one catastrophe. It's a pattern, a loop, a curse with 5 distinct symptoms that repeat every single generation, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. 2. The first symptom, the commodity trap. Argentina's original sin is geographical. The Pampas, that endless flat grassland surrounding Buenos Aires, is some of the most fertile soil on planet Earth. You could throw seeds out of a moving car and come back to find wheat. This sounds like a blessing. It's actually a trap. Here's the economic logic. When you can make enormous money selling beef and grain to the world, why bother building factories? Why invest in technology? Why educate engineers when you can just harvest what the ground gives you for free? This is called the resource curse, and Argentina caught it early. From 1880 to 1930, the country rode the agricultural export boom like a surfer on a perfect wave. The estancieros, the landed elite, became fabulously wealthy. They built palaces in Buenos Aires, sent their children to study in London, and assumed the good times would last forever. They didn't invest in diversification. They didn't build industrial capacity. They just kept selling cows and wheat, and when global commodity prices crashed in 1929, Argentina had nothing else to fall back on. But here's the curse. They didn't learn. Every few decades, commodities boom again. Soy in the 2000s, for example. And every time, Argentina doubles down on exports, neglects industry, and then acts shocked when prices crash. The first symptom. Argentina is addicted to selling raw materials and refuses to build anything else. 3. The second symptom, the inflation addiction. If there's one word that defines Argentine economic history, it's inflation. Not normal inflation. Not prices went up 3% this year, inflation. We're talking about inflation so extreme that restaurant menus are printed on whiteboards because paper menus become obsolete by dinner. Let me give you the highlight reel of Argentine inflation. 1975, 335, 1985, 672, 1989, 3, 79, 2023, 211. The 1,989 hyperinflation was so severe that supermarkets had employees whose only job was to walk around with price guns, updating stickers in real time. People would rush to spend their paychecks within hours of receiving them because waiting until tomorrow meant losing half your purchasing power. But why does this keep happening? The pattern is painfully consistent. Argentina runs a government deficit. It needs money. It can't borrow internationally because it has defaulted so many times, so it prints pesos. Printing money works for a while. It funds social programs. It pays government salaries. It keeps the political machine running. But eventually, too many pesos chasing too few goods means prices explode. Every Argentine government knows this. every single one. And yet, every single one eventually reaches for the money printer anyway. It's not stupidity, it's short-term political survival. Cutting spending means losing elections. Printing money means staying in power today and letting the next guy deal with the collapse. The second symptom. Argentina is addicted to printing money because the political cost of fiscal discipline is always higher than the economic cost of inflation, at least in the short term. 4. The third symptom. The pendulum of extremes. Here's where Argentina's curse gets truly bizarre. Most countries have political debates between center-left and center-right. Argentina has ideological whiplash. The country doesn't walk between economic models. It sprints from one extreme to the other, burns everything down, and then sprints back. Watch the pattern. 1,940 seconds to 1,955, Juan Perón. Massive state intervention, nationalization of industries, union power, protectionism. The economy booms initially, then collapses. 1,976 to 1,983, military dictatorship. Free market shock therapy, opening to foreign capital, crushing unions. The economy booms initially, then collapses. 1989 to 2001, Carlos Menem. Radical privatization, pegging the peso to the dollar, selling state assets. The economy booms initially, then collapses. 2003 to 2015, Kirchnerism. Back to state intervention, nationalization, protectionism, money printing. The economy booms initially, then collapses. 2023, Javier Milei. Chainsaw economics. Radical libertarianism, shutting ministries, dollarization talk, and the cycle begins again. Do you see the pattern? Each new government looks at the smoldering ruins left by the previous one and concludes that the problem was the ideology, not the execution. So they swing to the opposite extreme with religious fervor. The free marketeers see state intervention as the disease. The populists see free markets as the disease. Neither asks whether maybe, just maybe, the disease is the swinging itself. This pendulum creates something economists call policy uncertainty. Businesses don't invest because they don't know if the rules will exist in 5 years. Foreign capital doesn't commit because every election could mean expropriation or deregulation. The only rational strategy is short-term extraction. Get in, get profit, get out before the next revolution. The third symptom. Argentina doesn't evolve its economic policy. It oscillates between extremes, destroying institutional continuity every decade. 5. The fourth symptom. The default addiction. Let's talk about Argentina's relationship with debt. Argentina has defaulted on its sovereign debt 9 times. 9. That's more than any other country in modern history. The defaults occurred in 1827, 1890, 1951, 1956, 1982, 1989, 2001, 2014, and 2020. At this point, defaulting isn't a crisis, it's a tradition. The 2001 default was the largest in history at the time, around $100 billion. The economy contracted by 11% in a single year. Unemployment hit 25%. The middle class, which had been one of the largest and most prosperous in Latin America, was devastated. People who had saved their whole lives in dollars woke up to find their bank accounts forcibly converted to devalued pesos. The social contract shattered. Trust in institutions evaporated. But here's what makes Argentina's default addiction so destructive. It's not just the defaults themselves. It's what happens after. When you default, you lose access to international credit markets. Or you get access only at punishing interest rates. This means that when the next crisis hits, you can't borrow your way out. So, you print money, and we're back to symptom 2. The defaults also create a rational expectation among Argentines that the government will eventually steal their savings. So people don't save in pesos. They save in dollars, under mattresses, in foreign bank accounts, anywhere but the Argentine financial system. This capital flight means banks are perpetually underfunded. Businesses can't get loans, investment dries up, the economy stagnates, the government gets desperate, and it defaults again. The fourth symptom. Argentina has destroyed its own credibility so thoroughly that rational economic behavior by citizens actively undermines the economy. 6. The fifth symptom. The political economy of chaos. Now we arrive at the darkest part of the autopsy. All the symptoms we've discussed, the commodity trap, the inflation addiction, the pendulum extremes, the default cycle, they're not accidents, they're not bugs in the system. For certain actors, their features. Let me explain. Inflation is terrible for savers, but great for debtors. If you owe money and the currency collapses, your debt effectively disappears. Guess who the biggest debtor in Argentina is? The government. Currency crises are terrible for the middle class, but profitable for those with dollar access. When the peso crashes, anyone holding dollars can buy Argentine assets for pennies. Land, companies, real estate, all on sale. Political instability is terrible for long-term planning, but excellent for short-term extraction. Why build a sustainable business when you can capture government contracts, extract subsidies, and exit before the next administration cancels everything? Argentina has developed an entire economic ecosystem adapted to chaos, import-export businesses that profit from currency arbitrage, political operators who cycle between government and private sector, monetizing their connections, a financial elite that keeps wealth offshore and only brings it back to buy distressed assets during crashes. This is the hidden structure of the curse. Stability would actually hurt the people who benefit from instability, and those people have significant political and economic power. The fifth symptom. Argentina has a powerful constituency that profits from economic chaos, making reform politically almost impossible. 7. The Milei experiment, breaking the curse or repeating it. Which brings us to today. Javier Milei won the presidency in 2023 on a promise to break the cycle. The chainsaw wasn't just a prop, it was a symbol. Cut the state, cut the spending, cut the money printing. Shock therapy with a libertarian twist. In his first months, he implemented the largest fiscal adjustment in Argentine history, government ministries eliminated, subsidies slashed, the official exchange rate devalued by over 50%. The early results are economically predictable. Inflation initially spiked because devaluation raises import prices. Poverty increased because subsidies disappeared. The economy contracted as austerity bit. But here's the question that will determine whether Argentina finally breaks its curse or just adds another chapter. Will Milei's shock therapy create the foundation for sustainable growth? Or will the social pain generate a political backlash that sweeps in the next populist government, which will print money to undo the damage, which will create inflation, which will lead to crisis, which will elect another reformer, which will restart the cycle? The honest answer, nobody knows. Argentina has tried shock therapy before. It tried it in the 1,990 seconds under Menem. It worked spectacularly for almost a decade. Then it collapsed spectacularly in 2001. The curse isn't about any single policy. It's about the inability to maintain any policy long enough for it to compound. 8. The verdict. What would it take? So, what would actually break the curse? Economists have studied Argentina obsessively. The diagnosis is clear even if the cure is not. First, Argentina needs to break the commodity trap. This means industrial policy, investment in technology and education, and diversification of exports. Countries like South Korea and Singapore did this. It takes decades and consistent policy. Second, Argentina needs an independent central bank with a genuine mandate for price stability. This means constitutional protections that no president can override. Brazil did this after its own hyperinflation nightmare in the 1,990 seconds. It's possible. Third, Argentina needs to end the pendulum. This probably requires some form of grand political bargain, a consensus between left and right on basic economic rules that survive changes in government. Chile attempted this. It's fragile but possible. Fourth, Argentina needs to rebuild credibility with creditors. This might take a generation of honoring commitments. There's no shortcut. Fifth, and this is the hardest, Argentina needs to break the political economy of chaos. The people who profit from instability need to find new business models. This requires reducing corruption, strengthening institutions, and creating legitimate pathways to wealth. None of this is impossible. Other countries have done it, but all of it requires something Argentina has never demonstrated: patience. The curse isn't in the soil or the genes or some mystical fate. The curse is a set of incentive structures that reward short-term extraction over long-term building. Breaking it requires changing those incentives, and changing incentives requires power. And power in Argentina flows to those who can deliver results now, not in 20 years. Conclusion. The richest poor country on earth. Argentina remains, in 2024, the richest poor country on earth. It has educated citizens, fertile land, energy resources, a strategic location, and cultural vibrancy. It has everything a nation needs to succeed. And yet, every generation watches their parents' savings evaporate. Every generation experiences at least one economic collapse. Every generation asks the same question, why us? The answer, as we've seen, isn't a mystery, it's a pattern, a curse with 5 symptoms that repeat with almost mechanical precision. Will Milei break the cycle? Will the chainsaw cut through the curse? Or will we be back here in 10 years, doing another autopsy, asking the same questions? I don't know, but I do know this. Argentina's tragedy isn't that it was doomed from the start. Argentina's tragedy is that it keeps choosing the same fate over and over, expecting different results. And that, as they say, is the definition of something. If you found this deep dive valuable, hit that subscribe button, because whether Milei succeeds or fails, the next chapter of Argentine economic history is going to be fascinating. And I'll be here to break it down. See you in the comments, and remember, economics isn't just about money, it's about the choices societies make and the consequences they live with for generations.